I'm so glad that you took this time out your busy schedule to increase your awareness about human trafficking. I want to welcome you to Kojic Social Services of Michigan. We have been in existence since 2015. The founders are Michigan Council of Bishops and Bishop P.A. Brooks, who is the first assistant presiding bishop of the Church of God in Christ and the pastor of New St. Paul Tabernacle Church of God in Christ. Bishop Brooks demonstrates integrity, empathy, and compassion for individuals. Bishop Brooks continues to display his consistent faith in God as well as obedience to the Word of God. We are a nonprofit organization who serve low to moderate income individuals and address the psychological, emotional, and physical needs. We collaborate with surrounding agencies to refer and provide our clients with additional resources to meet their needs. We are a food distribution site for Focus Hope, and we also have a clothing closet to assist men and women who are in need of clothing and who may be returning back into the workforce. At this time, I would like to introduce our planning team who works so vigorously in making all of the events that we have, as well as making sure the organization runs properly. At this time, could we have the team come up? Give them a round of applause. I just want to acknowledge them again. Let's give them another round of applause. So we want to hear from you. We have a survey. If you would like, it's not mandatory, but if you would like to complete the survey, you should have it, or if you don't have it, you could raise your hands and we'll get one to you as soon as possible. At this time, I want to introduce to you our Council President, Brenda Jones. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. Let me start off by saying God is good, and He is good all the time, and He won't change. All right. It is truly an honor for me to be here with you all this evening to take a part of hosting something that is so very important and so near and dear to my heart. And I want to just thank the panel for being here, for participating. I want to thank the St. Paul Church of God in Christ for allowing us to grace their space, use their electricity, and take up the chairs. This is so important. It is truly so important because it is affecting Detroit. It is affecting Michigan, and it is hurting our babies. It is truly hurting our babies. And so, again, thank you to the panel. I want to just take this opportunity to acknowledge a few people. And I'm going to start off with David, Jalius. David, just stand up and wave. And David is a special agent in charge of the Detroit FBI office. And I want to take this opportunity to say to you, David, thank you for spending your birthday with us today. Today is his birthday. Happy birthday. I also want to acknowledge all of our law enforcement agencies that are participating. I'm beginning with the FBI, most definitely, Michigan State Police, our own Detroit Police Department. We have a special task force, and just thank you all. We have a lot of political partners that are participating. I want to thank the political partners that are participating. I do see Detroit 300 that are here to get information so that they can also help be the eyes and the ears. Thank you, Detroit 300. I want to acknowledge our elected officials that are here. I see Commissioner Alicia Bell. I see Treasurer Eric Sabri, and you will hear from on the panel our State Representative, Ms. Santana. And just also want to give you an update of things that have happened since the last meeting, and maybe I'll wait and let the panel do their thing, and then I'll give you an update on things that have happened. So I'm going to wait and give an update on things that have happened since the last meeting and begin to get the show on the road. So next, I'm going to have our moderators, introduction of the moderators to come forward. Ms. Consuelo Lopez.
Bon dia, hola, and what up, though, Detroit? Y'all laugh, but you're not saying what it be like back to me. I don't understand. So before I go on, there's two things I have to do, and that is to introduce my partner in solving crime, Valentina Seeley.
Hi, so my name is Valentina Seeley, and I am the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Community Relations Officer, and it is an absolute honor to be here with you, to help empower you, to share information, to help the community understand who does what, and to demonstrate the commitment of law enforcement toward combating this heinous crime. Hopefully, you'll get a lot out of this program, ask questions, and really, really listen to the messages being shared and the information being shared. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So her table is right here in the front, so if you haven't been there yet, please be sure to visit this table, and you'll see some really awesome information that you can receive, but also give to your beloved community. So the next table I would like to introduce is, so I'm serious, this is a serious occasion, but I'm going to be myself. So my sexy FBI partners in solving crime right here, Bushran Will. When you become friends, you become sexy. So, and where'd Mark go? Mark is coming right now, and Kaya, right here, and their organization is called Genesis Youth Services, and there will be are you going to have it? A human trafficking walk. So if you want to have more information on what they do and to be a part of this walk, please raise your hand or stand up and bow, or, okay. As well. And we also have Stacy Johnson, and she, a bug, sorry. She's have a play that's coming up in the next couple of weeks on human trafficking. If you want to know a whole bunch of more information about this play and how to support, please be sure to come visit her at her table. There she is. And we have also Harriet Kamek. She's an author and radio personality. And also, she has all her own personal stories in regards to human trafficking. And I can't see, yeah, there we go. So please visit. Information is powerful, knowledge is powerful. So let me tell you a couple of seconds about myself. I started this journey 2 years ago. And what I started hearing is that how many of us have a beep in the middle of the night, alarm saying, watch out, there's a child missing in your area? How many heard that? And so at first, we probably got annoyed because it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then one day I realized, it's like, wait a minute, this is happening a little bit too much. And I started to pay attention. And so with all the disasters and calamities that's going around in our world right now, it's easy to get distracted and to get desensitized and just take care of yourself as long as everyone is fine in my house. But what I've learned by working with law enforcement is that the people who get who get abducted, who are in human trafficking, it's not like they planned on it. And everyone believes that this cannot happen to me. So while we're distracting our everyday lives, that's how they take advantage of us. And so there's so much information and so many progress that has happened since I got started. And the person I want to highlight at this moment to give you a little bit more detail and some stats is my other best friend in solving crime, Special Agent in Charge, the FBI Field Office is David Jelios.
All right, I didn't bring a lot of stats here tonight. My experts are on the panel, and I know Nate can speak to it and Nicole, but I can tell you, you'll see over at our table, we have our Sept Task Force banner there, and it's the Southeast Michigan Trafficking and Exploitation Crimes Task Force. It's existed for about 10 years now, and in the course of 10 years, we've now recovered nearly 800 young girls, young victims, who have been trafficked on the streets of mostly Detroit or the Detroit area. Thank you, and the figures keep going up each year. I think we are approaching maybe 150 or more rescued this year alone. So over 10 years, you can see they're becoming more effective, but it also speaks to the problem that we're having out there in our communities of young people being trafficked. And it's not just young people, we're talking about human trafficking of adults and young people. But I'll quickly give it up to Consuela and the panel, but I would just tell all parents here today, I sort of liken it to, I grew up in a small, very safe town, and my mom would even let me walk 2 miles up to my hometown, you know? And she certainly wouldn't have dropped me off at the age of 10, 11, or 12 at the mall in Toledo, Ohio, near where I grew up, unescorted, and even more certainly never would have let me go with some friends to downtown Toledo and run around Toledo without some adult supervision. And I just say that along the lines of the internet and what our kids are on today. Sometimes they're on the internet in an unsupervised way, and sometimes it's an easy way to, let our kids not ask us to do a bunch of things. I'm a parent, whatever the case may be, but it's a very, very dangerous highway. And kids are curious at that age, and there are people who are using very, very clear methods to try and recruit them into sexual activity that's sexually exploitive, and eventually, try and arrange for meets, get them hooked on drugs, and get them involved in this, in trafficking. And it's something we all need to be on guard about, and we have a great team here that's doing great work on it. So I want to thank and applaud everyone for being here today, and just thank you for letting me say a couple of words.
So let's introduce our panel. It's really important to note that in this area of human trafficking, that we all work together. It's power in teamwork, right? So in the beginning, I didn't know them, and I think that if my father knew how much I'm working with law enforcement right now, in the beginning, he didn't really trust law enforcement, but now look at me now, right? So every single last person over here, if they're not my best friend, they will be. So for the first person, I'll have to introduce, because they just have Agent Nate here. We'll call him today Agent, Double Agent Sexy. He is from the Human Trafficking Division of the FBI. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you do for us? Just a few minutes.
No problem. How are we? Can everybody hear me? Okay, very good. Yeah, when you're best friends, you're on a first name basis. And so tonight, it's Agent Nate. But normally, it's Agent Nate Napper with the FBI, and I do work for the Semtech Task Force. You heard our agent in charge, Mr. Gelios, say it's the Southeast Michigan Trafficking and Exploitation Crimes Task Force. And the mission of that task force is to fight human trafficking in the Southeast Michigan area with a particular focus on the recovery of juveniles who are exploited by means of prostitution. And it's an FBI-led task force, but we could not do what we do without the many collaborations and partnerships that we have with many of the people at this table. You'll hear from a variety of panelists tonight who also serve on the same Semtech task force along with me. Nicole serves, you have Tracy Walton, Bob Kane, and Alan Williams down, just to name a few. So we appreciate our local partnerships that we have, and it's the reason that we've been able to be as successful as we have. So we really appreciate you guys coming out tonight. We know it's Thursday, and it's getting on toward the end of the week, and maybe you're a little bit fatigued at this point, but it's an important topic. It's a darker topic, but it's important to educate the public about it because it's proliferating, not just around the United States as a whole, but right here in our local communities in Southeast Michigan, from the inner cities to the suburbs and everywhere in between. And so we're grateful that you have taken time out of your evening to spend with us, to educate yourselves, and we hope that you can walk out of here just a little bit more informed about this issue, so that if you see something in the future, you can say something and ultimately hopefully stop a potential exploitive situation from happening. So it's a council president, Ms. Jones, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. We appreciate it. And to our SAC, Mr. Gelios, certainly we could not do what we do without the support of our upper management. So thank you as well for your support, sir.
And next is our victim specialist, also from the FBI field, Detroit field, right? Field office, is Dr. Nicole McGee.
Okay. Good evening. The doctor is not necessary, but as she stated, my name is Nicole McGee. I'm a victim specialist for the FBI Detroit office. Our division, the Detroit division covers the whole state of Michigan, so it's called the Detroit division, but we cover the whole state. As such, there are 3 people who do my job for the state, myself, and then there's my counterpart, Carmen Kucinich, who works out of the Grand Rapids office, and then there is my third counterpart, David Paul, who is in the Marquette office in the UP. So betwixt the 3 of us, we cover all of the counties for the Detroit division of the FBI. And Nate basically covered everything there is to know about Semtech for the most part, but I am the one that's responsible for handling all of the victim matters. So when we recover victims, whether they be young or old, juveniles or adults, myself along with my NGO partners who are present with me this evening, Salvation Army, Wayne County Sexual Assault Forensic Examiner's Office, Vista Maria, hey guys, and the rest of them, they come out and help me with all of my operations whenever we're doing operations, and without them, I couldn't do what I do. So my main goal is to be able to provide the resources needed for victims and to work with them to provide what victims may need, be that the substance abuse treatment, shelter, domestic violence issues, even snacks, toiletries, if they need sweatpants, a lot of them don't have their clothes with them, whatever it is. So we try to provide for as many victim resources as we can. And we are not able to help as many people as we would like to, but we do everything that we can. So even when we're not doing operations just on a daily basis, if we come across victims, I'm the one that's responsible for calling the Department of Health and Human Services, or CPS, and making sure that the children are reported, the situation is reported, and that the situation is looked into. So that among many other things, but that's the gist of what my job is in regards to the task force and for the FBI Detroit.
Go ahead, Michigan State Police, Sergeant Ward. Go ahead.
Thank you. How you doing? I'm Tracy Walden, Sergeant with the Michigan State Police. I'm actually assigned to the SEMTAC Task Force as well. So they kind of cover what we do, but as far as the state police go, most of our cases down in the Tri-County area are funneled through the task force. What tends to happen is a road trooper will get something, or one of the detectives will get something, and then they'll contact me as a liaison for the department, and then what they'll do is give me their information, what they have, and then I'll make a determination, help with my team members, determine if it's a sex trafficking situation or not. Most times it's just, something simple that is not sex trafficking. So basically, that's it for us.
Thank you, and on to the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Jennifer and Harold.
Sure. I'm going to start. Can you guys hear me? Okay. My name is Rodney Riggs, and I'm a Special Agent with Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. Can I get a show of hands? How many people have heard of HSI? That's usually the case. So we're trying to remedy that by doing things like this event tonight to get the word out on who we are. I'm the investigative arm. My agency is the investigative arm under Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which Ms. Seeley introduced earlier. Now, Agent Nate with the FBI talked about what their priority is in conducting human trafficking investigations from a federal standpoint, and that is an emphasis on domestic, juvenile sex trafficking. My agency's priority is to investigate when foreign nationals present in the United States, either legally or undocumented, are exploited for labor purposes. So that's primarily what we do. So when you think of or hear HSI in the future, a good way to remember what we do is any crimes that involve the U.S. border, whether it's people coming or going illegally or bringing something, merchandise, for example, drugs or money, or it could be anything. They could be importing things that are against customs policy and not paying their dues or their fees or their taxes, things like that. So that's what my agency does, and that's what our priority is when it comes to human trafficking.
Thank you very much. State rep, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Representative Sylvia Santana of the 9th District. I represent 3 of the top poverty-stricken zip codes in the state of Michigan. My area of Cody Rouge has the most children in the city of Detroit between the ages of 1 and 18. I also sit on the appropriations budget, which I see some of our other entities here that we represent that budget for the state of Michigan, which is $54.8 billion. And so there's a lot of partners up here who are impacted by that budget that also impacts the human trafficking piece. I know that Vista Maria, we've been able to appropriate dollars towards that facility to help with human trafficking and also partnering with the community in order to support those women who are victims of human trafficking. And so, we don't appropriate, in my opinion, enough money towards this issue at the state level. About $200,000 goes towards awareness. And I think there's so much more that we can do because we are the top 2 area in nationally with human trafficking issues. So I definitely think that's we're at a good point, but we can always do better to make sure that our children are protected and people are safe. So thank you.
Thank you to the panel. I'm just going to pause for a moment and take an opportunity to acknowledge our Congressman John Conyers, the Dean. And I want to give him that special plug-in because I know he has also been working with us and working with human trafficking up in D.C. So I thank you for all of your hard work. I don't know if you wanted to say a word or two, but I thank you for all of your hard work in D.C. You stuck in and hung in a long time. So thank you, and thank you for acknowledging that we do have a problem with human trafficking and that we need all the help that we can get. So again, thank you, Congressman.
All right, Kev.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Good. My name is Kevin. I am a federal prosecutor. I work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Listen, Listen, our job's pretty simple. We partner with the FBI, with Homeland Security, and with pretty much anybody who'll partner with us to arrest people who will serve as human traffickers and traffic our girls, sometimes our boys, but mainly our girls, out over the internet, on the street, wherever they do it. And when these brave men and women make arrests and bring us people who are traffickers, it is my job and my office's job to put those people in jail and hold them accountable for what they've done. On the federal level, we have a real focus on people who would traffic minors. And so I want to just give one shout out to everybody that came out tonight for some information. I want you to understand something beyond just the idea that you're going to be educated. I know you're going to have questions and want to know, hey, what can I do to help with this problem? What should I be on the lookout for? And I want you to hear everybody tonight and be on the lookout for things. But the other thing you can do is when you're having a conversation with the people in your circle of life, you get an opportunity to tell them about this problem and maybe they never thought about it before. Because here's the truth. When we go to trial, and we go to trial a lot on these cases, these pimps that we put up on trial, what they count on, what they depend on, is that you are going to see that little girl as nothing but a word I won't say in God's house. But they are going to look at you and they're going to say, this girl is worth nothing. And that jury, made of 12 people from my community, will verify what I've been doing to this girl because they will know that she is nothing. And so by simply being here and learning about it, you are going to fight back against that concept that some of our girls aren't worthy. Because that's what this is at the bottom. These men are exploiters, and they are exploiters for profit of our girls, and they are counting on law enforcement not to care. They are counting on the community not to care, and they are counting on, if those two fail, that jurors who are made up of our community members will not care. And I have a secret that I'll share with you as long as you promise not to tell any of the pimps. We care because we keep winning at trial, and we keep putting people in jail. So that's what we do.
Up next, and before they introduce themselves, I would like for our men and women of the Detroit Police Department to stand. Our first line of defense are these beautiful men and women. And on that note, I would like to introduce our panelists. From the Detroit Police Department. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Detective Robert Kane. I am a Detroit police officer. I've been a Detroit police officer for 29 years. I've worked at sex crimes for over 15 years. We solve crimes where victims have been sexually assaulted. We take the cases from the start, where the victim first gets assaulted, to the end, where the jury says guilty of all charges. Sergeant Ward is my supervisor. He's a great supervisor. Whenever I ask him, I tell him what I have and what I need to do, he says, get it done. And he lets me go out and work. That's a great supervisor. We work at Sex Crimes, we work with a lot of different partners. I also am a member of the Sept Task Force. The task force involves the FBI, of course, the state police, many suburban departments, county and state police. What is a task force? It's every one of those groups getting together and solving crimes together. Everybody plays a role, everybody plays a different role, and when you come together, you get the job done. And we've been doing that for over 10 years now. We also work with a lot of entities that are not law enforcement, such as Alternative for Girls, Wayne County Safe, I believe they're in the house. Wayne County Safe, they are a sexual assault nurse examiners program. They play a prominent role in solving crimes. They try to find evidence from the victim that is left on them when they're assaulted. And if it's there, they'll get it. And We get it to the lab, we find out who the perpetrators are, and we go after them. We also work with St. Vincent de Paul and, of course, the state and federal prosecutors. Thank you.
I'm Sergeant Bobby Ward, officer in charge of the Detroit Police Sex Crimes Unit. Detective Kane basically gave you a real thorough overview of what we do at the Sex Crimes Unit, so I'll just piggyback off that and elaborate from an administrative standpoint what some of our initiatives are now. And first and foremost is educating the public. We're real driven to educate the community groups, the first responders in particular, because a lot of times they don't come in contact with these victims who are being trafficked, and they may not know the signs. So we're trying to educate the schools, the hospitals, our own patrol officers. A lot of time, though they are armed with a lot of information in the academy, they don't specifically, at this point, cover that, human trafficking. So that falls on us to go to the precincts and educate these young patrol officers. So some of these girls they come in contact with who they think are prostituting, majority of the time, they're not prostituting by their own free will. They're being humanly trafficked. And that's where our job comes in, to educate them so they know what to look for. They, in turn, can let us know, and then my detectives can go ahead and investigate the cases. So it basically is summarizing that. If you're interested, if you're a house of worship, a community group, or anything of that nature, or school, and you want us to educate, just get with myself or Detective Kane after this, and we'll give you contact information. We have no problem coming out, doing a little PowerPoint presentation, a Q&A, whatever it is. But that's our goal. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alan Williams. I'm a Detroit police officer assigned to the Vice Enforcement Section. The Vice Enforcement Section deals with quality of life issues in your neighborhood within the city. We also deal with prostitution in neighborhoods, after hours, any establishment or business that sells alcohol. One of our main focuses also is human trafficking. I am also a member of the Semtech Task Force and serve as like the liaison between the Detroit Police Department and the task force for, like, if there's a scene where a young person or a victim is found in Detroit, I get called and go assess it and then report to the bosses at the Semtech Task Force and see whether it's going to be the federal side or the state side. I've been a member of the police department for 23 years, and I work with some great people here.
One moment, Sept. One moment. So I would like to take this opportunity to recognize our Wayne County Treasurer, Eric Sabri, and staff. Okay, just clap anyway. So now it comes to local. How do we address this problem, how to report local? And before I introduce Matt, I would like for Detroit 300, as well as any patrol group or block club, to stand up, please. Let's see our partners. You too can be just like them in helping resolve crime in our neighborhoods. Thank you so much for your dedication, everyone. Now, who did they report to if there is a problem? Crime Stoppers.
Thanks, Consuela. Once again, my name is Matt Conquest. I'm the Director of Law Enforcement from Crime Stoppers of Michigan. I took over that position after a 28-year law enforcement career. And a lot of you may have some familiarity with Crime Stoppers of Michigan, but basically, in a nutshell, we are an organization, nonprofit, that partners with over 200 local, state, and federal police agencies in the 7 counties of southeast Michigan. And when I took over the position, I quickly realized, and I knew this from my law enforcement days too, that there are people that don't want to work directly with the police, whether it be that no snitch mentality that still exists out there, whether they have information on a family member or a friend or a neighbor that they don't want to be known as the reporting person, whether they are in fear of retaliation from the possible suspect. There are reasons that people, whether right or wrong, don't want to work directly with the police, and we provide that bridge for folks in the community to supply us information that we process, and we get that information directly to law enforcement. And the key to it is that in the last 10 years, we have processed over 49,000 tips, and every one of those people have remained anonymous. And I say that with pride, but I want everybody to understand, us at Crime Stoppers, we realize that in a perfect world, our organization wouldn't need to exist, because we always encourage people to work directly with law enforcement, because there's no better witness than somebody who would want to bear witness at trial and work directly with law enforcement and answer any follow-up questions that may be needed. But we do provide that bridge for the people, for whatever reason, don't want to work directly with law enforcement. Since 2014, Crime Stoppers of Michigan has assisted law enforcement on over 660 arrests. And since 2010, we've actually paid out over $500,000 to those anonymous tipsters for providing that information to law enforcement. These are the worker bees, everybody to the right of me. We're the information supplier. It's a great panel to the right of me. Ask as many questions, because these are wonderful people.
Thank you, Matt. So now we have our introductions. At this moment, I'm going to start asking the panelists questions, and meanwhile, I need for you all to, if you have a question, we have cards, index cards for you to write your question on, and raise your hand if you want one of those, and between Valentina and myself, we will ask the question for you, and we want to make sure that we stay within time, okay? So just raise your hand if you need one, and they'll give it to us. So I'm gonna start this first question off, and maybe it's kind of really difficult. What is the difference between prostitution and human trafficking? And maybe, Agent Nate, you can answer that one.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, it's a good question. It's an important question, and I think ultimately it's the reason why we're here tonight. What is human trafficking, right? And specifically, the question is, what's the distinction between prostitution and human trafficking? So I'll first define trafficking, and then I'll tell you why it's different from prostitution. So human trafficking is the commercial exploitation of another person for sex or labor services through force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the three pillars that we typically talk about when we're referring to human trafficking: force, fraud, or coercion. Now, that commercial exploitation piece is important, and that's ultimately what separates human trafficking, in my mind, from prostitution. Forgive me for putting it this way, but anybody in the room could go out and choose to prostitute themselves, right? But the difference with human trafficking is that there's a commercial exploitation element that goes on where, when you're a pimp, you're exploiting somebody for financial gain through force, fraud, or coercion. So that commercial element, to me, is the distinguishing characteristic between prostitution and human trafficking.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to add on to it?
No, I think Agent Nate did it, hit it right on the head, so I'm good.
Okay. All right. The next question is, once a crime has been reported to you, how do you follow up and follow through with the community safety partners? Anyone can answer that one. Don't rush.
Okay, to answer that question, when the crime is first initially reported and officers respond to the scene, they'll gather their initial information. They'll contact our office. One of my detectives will make an assessment over the phone. This is any type of sexual assault, even if it's human trafficking or not. We'll usually make a random, if a rape kit has to be done, the victim's safety is our first thing. So medical treatment for them, take them to the hospital, they'll get the rape kit down, done by SAFE, and we'll send one of my detectives out to take a statement from them. If during the interim of taking the statement, we feel that there's a human trafficking nexus involved, I have one of my in-house experts, like Detective Kane, will make an assessment. He'll reach out to his partners in Semtech. If they feel it has a strong enough human trafficking nexus, we'll hand it over to them. We'll do whatever they need done on our end, and we'll hand it over to them. As far as community, if it's a situation where it's a serial rapist and we need to get the information out to groups like 300 or Crime Stoppers or something, we'll make arrangements through our media relations and get that information out to them. That's about the gist of it. I mean, it's going to differ from crime to crime, but that's generally how the machine works as far as disseminating information to the public.
Thank you. Any other law enforcement would like to add to that? No takers? So next question is, and this is specifically for DHS HSI. Can you give examples of how people are being targeted into trafficking?
Well, from HSI's standpoint, like I said earlier, our focus is on the labor portion of human trafficking. So we're interested in identifying the people that have a vulnerability in that regard. And what I mean by that is if you're present in this country without legal status, that's a pretty big hammer for someone who's willing to exploit you, to hold over your head, to get you to do what they want you to do. As Agent Nate said with the FBI, the force, fraud, or coercion is still an element in labor trafficking as it is in sex trafficking. So what's happening is you're being controlled in a manner, or you're being exploited in a manner that you're not in control of your own destiny. That's essentially what happens. When I get to some of these events in the past, people like to talk about examples. I can give you some examples. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Novi case, where the restaurant owner had 5 Mexican workers working in his restaurant. They were all here without proper documentation, and he told them that if they did not work in his restaurant under his rules, that he was going to call the police were going to come and arrest him, and then they were going to be put in jail, and then after they served their jail time, they were going to be deported. That's not how the process works, but those people are not super sophisticated in knowing the ways of the way we do things here. They don't know that that's not actually what's going to happen, so they fall prey to that. And then they find themselves working in a restaurant for 20 hours a day for $8 an hour. They work 7 days a week. They get no benefits. They get no overtime. They get no breaks, things like that. So it's whatever makes an individual vulnerable to being exploited, and for us, it's a lot of times it's the status of their status in the country.
Thank you very much. You looking like you want to answer that question. Sextortion, what is it and how does it impact our youth? Anyone can answer. Okay, Kevin, your first one.
All right, is everybody familiar with that phrase, sextortion? Nope. So it's 2 words smushed together, extortion and sex. And the idea goes something like this. It's typically targeted at girls, teenage or preteen girls who are on the internet. And someone comes along and convinces them to take a picture that they wish they hadn't taken. And maybe that picture is them without their shirt on, without their pants on, without whatever, or just simply in their bra or underwear, just something that they wished they didn't have, they wish they wouldn't have taken. And then they flip the script. And the person who was their friend, who convinced them to do this, says, look, here's the deal. I have this picture, or these several pictures of you. I am your friend on Facebook, and I will post these pictures of you on Facebook, or I will put them on Twitter, or I will put them in email, or I will do whatever and put them wherever you want to embarrass you or harass you, unless you do one thing for me. And that extortion we've seen is almost always involved further images or videos that they want this particular victim to make. But it doesn't have to be. We have had cases where the extortion piece was, I want your parents' bank account numbers, or I want you to come to this place and I want you to do this thing for me. And so the extortion goes in sort of a variety of directions. But typically what happens is an individual takes a picture or an image or video that they wish they hadn't taken. The extorter then uses that to get more of what they want. And the promise is, just take one more, and then I will leave you alone, and this is over. And so they take one more, and then it's one more, and it's never one more. And so for parents in the room, I know Mr. Gelios talked to parents in the room when we talked about phones and things. When I was a kid, we didn't have phones, praise God, because of the things that I've done, the knucklehead things I did is not on a viral video someplace. But what we had is got spoken to a lot about drunk driving. That was a huge thing when I was going through school, and they encourage parents to have this sort of promise with your kid. If your kid is out and they have been drinking and they feel like they have the car, give them that safe phone call that says, you can call me because I don't want you driving drunk because I don't want you to die. And it's more important to me, and I will let you, I will let you off without too much punishment. My suggestion to some parents is to consider that for the internet, because our kids sometimes get trapped on the internet. They take a picture they wish they hadn't. They've trusted somebody they wish they hadn't. And then what happens is they find themselves in this impossible place, and they're terrified to tell you that they took a picture they wish they hadn't taken, or that they visited that website they wish that you told them that they should not visit, and they're afraid to tell you the truth. And so I would have hard conversations with your kids about their internet history, about their friends online, what kind of social media applications they use, because we've seen people from all walks of life with all kinds of families, involved parents, not involved parents, all kinds of different folks who've been sextorted on the internet. And so I would encourage parents out there to have those conversations with your kids.
Thank you, Kevin. I was about to change the topic just a little bit. I just wanted to go back to the question about the difference between prostitution and human trafficking. It is definitely true what Agent Nate stated about, prostituting yourself versus being forced to do it. But what I would encourage us to remember is that the majority of the women that are out there that even started out prostituting themselves, unfortunately it doesn't stay that way a lot of times, because they see the traffickers see the vulnerabilities in these women or young men, and they then come into their lives and make them promises of things and that type of thing. So oftentimes the person that may start out prostituting themselves, even young people who say, well, I'm just going to do this, I want to get some a new dress for prom, or I want to get some new shoes for homecoming. And they say, okay, well, I'll post myself and I'll just do a couple dates and I'll get the money, and then I'll just go ahead and buy what I'll need. But oftentimes it doesn't stay like that. They become victims, and I just want us to be aware of that, because a lot of times it's so easy for us to, pass that young lady on Woodward or what have you and say, man, look, that's a shame, it doesn't make any sense, they're just nasty or whatever. But when you think about it, what person says when they're young, I want to grow up to be trafficked, or I want to grow up to be a prostitute? It doesn't go like that. So unfortunately, a lot of them end up in a trafficking situation, even though they didn't start out with that being the case. And I just wanted to bring that up, because a lot of times it'll start out as one thing, and then before they know it, it's something else. And that goes across the board from young people to adults.
Thank you. DPD?
Yes. How are they targeted? I want to piggyback off what Kevin, attorney, said here. Another way, I've interviewed 7 juveniles probably, I've talked to 7 juveniles in the last 2 weeks. And what Kevin said is correct. Their perpetrators all met them on the internet, or they were introduced to somebody on the internet. That's one important fact. But another thing that I found out throughout the course of dealing with these juveniles, they're targeted with gifts, okay? So they're showered with gifts, trips, dinners, expensive things. But after they get so much, the traffickers say, I didn't do that for free. You got to pay me back now. So that's another way that they target them. They lure them in. Money, and then sometimes as a sense of freedom. Each one of the girls that I talked to were runaway. So they give them a place to stay, no curfew, no rules. And it also starts there also. So those are a few more ways that I see personally that these juveniles have been targeted.
And then just to follow up on that as well, they're also targeted at malls. They'll use young people that's around their age, young teenagers that's involved in trafficking to help recruit them. They'll approach them at the mall if they see them by themselves. You know, young girls, if they see them by themselves, they'll approach them at the mall, start talking to them, get an exchange of phone number or something like that, and then they'll use that as a tool. And then they're also, like you said, the social media, and then also at schools. They recruit at schools as well. So that's just something to be cognizant of.
I have a personal example of that where we've been in Southwest Detroit educating our parents and youth and other community members, and if the parent just so happened to be listening one day and she shared it with her 22-year-old daughter who happened to be at Myers in Allen Park. She was on a cell phone with her boyfriend and on FaceTime, and so a man walked up to her and said, "Hey, do you know where Walmart is?" And she kind of like paused, like, "Well, what is such and such?" And so she had her phone like this, and her boyfriend said, "Wait a minute, it's a van pulling up behind you." So she hurried up and was able to get in her car and secure, herself. But the thing is, this is the main distraction where I want to be sure that we understand this is the main distraction. We have to start paying attention to our surroundings. And that's the first thing, having those flat out, real conversations with our youth and our young adults and how to protect themselves and what to say and what to do when a situation occurs. It's better to have it and not need it and need it and not want it. My last questions before I turn it over for some additional questions from you all in the audience is, how do you leverage your partnerships within the immigrant community in this area? Don't rush. How do you talk to the immigrant communities? Because a lot of times immigrant communities, they might have they don't have a relationship with law enforcement or city officials. And so how have you leveraged it? And I would like to DPD to answer that first and then it go to the next.
The way we handle it is we come out like we are tonight. We go out to the community, we talk to groups, go to churches, we go to schools, community events, we post flyers, and we talk to people. We tell them what to look for. We tell them to get in your kid's business. Look on that computer, who are they talking to? What sites are they going on? Are they going where they say they're going? Are they going to their friend's house, or are they going somewhere else? Find out. Get a phone number. That's what we do. We go out and talk to the community.
Excellent. So on the part of the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, my job has been to reach out to communities, to be present, to inform communities, immigrant communities, about the work that we do to combat human trafficking. Our amazing agents at HSI, on a regular basis, they investigate these crimes and work together with all the federal partners and local law enforcement to investigate these crimes. We do take a victim-centric approach. We have developed, we have a victim assistance program, and maybe Jennifer will want to say a few words about that in a little bit. But our goal is to inform immigrant communities about human trafficking and the fact that human trafficking exists in various forms. You have labor trafficking, right? Forced labor. You have domestic servitude, which is very important for immigrant communities to know about. A lot of times people say, well, they just come here and make money even though they're illegal, but they're the ones that are the most vulnerable. They're the ones that, the owners of businesses may take advantage of. They're the ones that are more likely to be trafficked. They're the ones that need to be empowered with information. They're the ones that need to know that ICE is not going to come in and take a victim away and send them back. ICE is going to come in and take a victim-centric approach, rescue victims, and then we're going to talk to them about continued presence, the way law enforcement at the local level, at the state level, federal level could help them. We're going to talk to them about the U visas, right, which is so important for law enforcement to understand and to utilize in assisting foreign nationals who are willing to collaborate and help law enforcement combat these heinous crimes. We're going to talk to them about the T visas, Okay, so again, for us, our commitment at DHS through the Blue Campaign, we're putting out the word. We're out there continuously around the nation, sharing information right here at my table. We have cards, which pretty much, we have them in 20 plus languages, helping people understand what does human trafficking look like. Are they taking your documents? Are they keeping your documents from you? Are they telling you that you're not allowed to talk to anybody? Are they keeping you locked up? Are they working you 17 hours and paying you 4 hours? Are they paying you 90% less than they would pay a U.S. citizen? Right? The reason that we encourage legal employment is because when someone comes in here in legal status on a legal working visa, other entities are involved, right? The Department of Labor. And we keep these employers honest. We make sure that employers pay foreign nationals what they would pay green card holders or U.S. citizens. So again, what do? We share information, we educate, we rescue victims, and we work with our local, federal, and state partners to encourage reporting of crime. No one should live the life that some of these victims live. And it is important for them. And law enforcement is here to rescue them and to help them. So that's pretty much the take on DHS. Anything else? Good?
Just real quick on that also. Crime Stoppers has partnered with the Southwest Safety Hub. We're starting to make a lot of our posters, our door hangers, advertising how to report crime in Hispanic. In Dearborn, we'll do it in Arabic. So we are starting to spread the word in different languages. But also, just a quick note, the Detroit, and I'll speak on behalf of the Detroit Police Department and their partnership and how they spread the word. The Detroit Police Department, from my perspective as an outsider looking in, does an absolutely wonderful job with their neighborhood police officers. We are now starting to process. We are now starting to process door hangers advertising the names and the contact information for the neighborhood police officers so they can distribute throughout the neighborhoods to give you folks better access to them for the reporting of crime. So kudos to DPD.
Okay, so we'll move on now, and I'll ask a few of the questions that we received. Obviously, we want to move through the questions and answer as many questions as possible. Okay, first question. Once a victim has been rescued, what type of services are provided to them? Housing, therapy?
I know I didn't get a chance to introduce myself, but I am Jennifer DeFalco. I'm a victim assistance specialist with Homeland Security Investigations. And if I were to tell you what I did, I'd just be repeating a lot of what Dr. McGee said. I'm just on the Homeland Security side of things. But we basically work to get people housing, any services that they need, like Valentina mentioned, legal status in the country if they do not have the legal status to work here. We work closely with Vista Maria, Alternatives for Girls. I see all of our people back there. Salvation Army, you guys are all amazing. They help get people the things that they need, clothing, food, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, things like that.
Okay, so I'll speak about the juveniles that we recover, because a lot of times people want to know what happens when we recover juveniles. Basically, I'm talking about juvenile sex trafficking victims. When we recover juveniles that have been in a trafficking situation, we are not allowed to take custody of them, meaning we cannot say what will happen to them once they are in our presence. That is part of what I do, is I get contacted. I contact the Department of Health and Human Services, which is CPS, and then they have to determine what will happen with the child. Unfortunately, counties in Michigan, and I don't know if this is true for the rest of the country, but in counties in Michigan, none of them work the same. So I can recover a child and from Wayne County, and their protocol is that the Department of Health and Human Services comes out, they send a worker and somebody with them, and then they determine right there, okay, we're going to figure out what's going on. If it's a human trafficking matter, they file a human trafficking petition with the Wayne County Juvenile Court, and they go about the business of trying to place that child in Vista Maria, one of our wonderful partners, so that they can figure out what's going on with that child for a day or two or longer if they can get that spot or get the court to order that. In Macomb County, their protocol is that they'll send a worker out, but that worker is only going to go back to that child's home and determine whether or not that child has food and water or access to food and water, and then they're going to say, okay, that child can return home. If the parent or their home life is determined to be one where they are provided the basic necessities, then in their opinion, the child can return home, even if the parent is complaining, what, my child keeps running away, I'm trying to do everything I can to keep them here. They will not follow the rules. Well, they haven't, made full strides to be able to come up to where Wayne County is. Clearly, Wayne County is more populated. But I will say that they are trying to make changes with how they go about working with victims, juvenile victims, and it is making a difference, but we have a long way to go. So these are some of the challenges that we face when we recover victims as to what's going to happen to them ultimately. Officer Williams was just talking about one of the 7 children that he's recovered over the past week, mainly due to myself, because I'm the one that that when they call me, I'm like, hey, can you see if you can check into this for me? They're reporting this, and he is always more than gracious to help out in that regard. But I'm mentioning that because we had a situation just this past weekend where three children were recovered from a house, and today one of those children is already missing again. And that's typically how it goes, unfortunately. So I'm saying that to say that even though we have resources in place and we try to have things in place for the children to be able to go someplace and, get the help they need, unfortunately, because of the Safe Harbor Act, we're not able to place them in a secure setting. So they have to be placed in the least restrictive setting, which is an unsecure setting, and then at that point they run again, and we then have to try to recover them again. So even though we try to do what we can with victims once they're recovered, unfortunately, they're placed in situations where they can leave again, and because they don't have the mindset to want to try to make differences in their lives at that time for whatever reason, we often lose sight of them, even though we have our best efforts to try to keep track and do the best we can for them.
Thanks, Nicole. And just to add a little bit on to that, you heard the concept already mentioned from the podium, this victim-centered approach. This is really an important concept that's been circulating both around the state and nationwide. And it's very encouraging here in Michigan, and we have a state representative on the panel who might be able to speak a little bit further to this. But you heard Nicole mention this idea of safe harbor. Part of the idea of safe harbor is that if you're a juvenile and you're recovered in a prostitution situation, my understanding according to state law is that you're presumed to be a human trafficking victim. And so the state law is becoming much more friendly to victims in these settings. And I think we've made great strides at the legislative level. A lot of the focus tonight has been law enforcement, but the state legislators and the local county officials and community leaders are to be commended for their work as well. So I appreciate that very much.
Next question. Is it true that traffickers are loading the kids up by the containers full and shipping them all over the world to other countries?
I guess that would fall under my purview. I would say that I've never seen a bigger emphasis in any programmatic area in law enforcement in my 26 years of law enforcement than human trafficking. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what is actually happening. If you watch TV, maybe that's a prevailing thought or a process that's put into place. That has not been our experience here in Detroit. From a labor trafficking standpoint, it's more the exploitation of people who are here without proper status. Now, I just want to piggyback just a second on the previous topic. You heard Ms. Seeley talk about T visas and U visas and continued presence. I think those terms sometimes get thrown out and not everybody understands what they mean, but I just want to explain. Everybody here, I'm assuming, it has legal status to be in this country based on their birthright. They were born here, so they have a right to be in this country. Now imagine if you're in this country illegally or without proper documentation and you're being exploited and your traffickers are telling you, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to report you and you're going to go to jail and you're going to get deported. when we come in and investigate a crime, when we get a lead and it turns into something bigger and we conduct an investigation and become successful, you come in, say you come into a trafficking situation like the restaurant I talked about in Novi, you have these 5 undocumented workers from Mexico. You come in and you have these 5 individuals now who are, as of this second, they're in this country without proper status or illegal, okay? That scares people, and they don't know what it means for them, and that a lot of times they don't want to talk and they're unwilling to help because they don't know what's in store for them. When we can do these things like a continued presence, that gives them immediate status in this country for a certain amount of time, and then they can relax. Continued presence, for example, is a year. You get a reprieve for a year, you're here legally for a year, to then work on a proper legal status that's more permanent. And then you can work on T visas and U visas. That's a very powerful tool for our agency to get victims to cooperate in these investigations, which is paramount to any successful human trafficking investigation.
Thank you. I have heard that there's a price for children. What is the range of prices? I have heard that basically people are willing to pay a price for children. What, in your opinion, what's the going price? It varies, right?
Tough question to answer because the price varies from victim to pimp to John to location. So you can't really put a set amount on it. It changes all the time. People will pay whatever price it is, which is, I think, is disgusting, but that's just, it's a business, it's a booming business, it's an illegal business, but we can't say that there's a set price. It's different wherever you go, depending on the John, the victim, the pimp. We can't put a price tag on it.
And if I could just add, I think a lot of us, we're sitting here and we're talking about this happening to somebody else. And we sit here and we think that we're not vulnerable and nothing can happen. And when we talk about a price, we actually all have a price. At some point, somebody can hold something over our head to get us to do something that we wouldn't normally do. And if that means your children, your loved ones, we all have a price that we can be bought. And we can be coerced into doing things that are not within our own moral scope. So,
thank you. Oh, sure, absolutely.
Sorry about that. So in the back, one of our senators, Senator Judy Edmonds, has a pamphlet back here. She's a champion for this issue. One of the things that Polaris said is that the average for labor, forced labor, is $13,000, and it can go as high as $67,000 per victim. So that documentation is in the back.
Thank you. Is there a particular zip code in Detroit that has more disappearances of young girls than others, or more human trafficking than others?
There's really no geographic area in Detroit that excels more than others because it's a mobile business. It's not really stationary like that where it's one area that they're quote-unquote snatching up girls or soliciting children at. It's a widespread problem. It could be in the low-income area, it could be in a high-income area. It could be in the city, it can be in the suburbs. There's really no set geographic area. There's no boundaries for this type of crime.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. There's no set Detroit boundaries for this. This is happening all over Southeast Michigan. That's why the task force is a Southeast Michigan task force, because it happens in Wayne County, it happens in Macomb County, it happens in Oakland County, it happens out at the airport, it happens in Washtenaw. So it happens everywhere. It's not just a Detroit crime.
Thank you. Can you give an update on the ladies from the Victory Inn? Are any of them receiving counseling? Are any of them receiving help?
Is everyone familiar with the Victory Inn case? Happened in January. I'll let Agent Riggs talk a little bit more about the specifics of that. On the victim side of things, we have offered all of them services. Unfortunately, when working with a population, it's very difficult to keep people in the services. As Dr. McGee mentioned, people go missing within days of getting the resources that they need because they end up back doing some of the things that they're just used to doing. So it's tough. We've offered services, we've gotten people services, and we can't say specifically who and how many, but we've gotten lots of help from our cohorts in the audience, and thank you.
I believe I was the co-case agent. I am the co-case agent on that investigation. It's still ongoing, so there's not a whole lot we can talk about, but I will say that there was in excess of 30 victims that were rescued from that during that investigation, and like Mr. Falco said, it's tough. You offer everything that you possibly can, but you can't force someone to do something they don't want to do. I mean, it's heartbreaking. We've had cases where we drop the women off, we get them into treatment, we get them accepted into a program, we drop them off, and the second we drive away, they walk away. So it is a tough discipline to get in. It can be frustrating, but we can only do what we can only do.
What? Yeah, I just couldn't hear you.
I apologize for busting the protocol. My name is Alexandra Angelkovic. I'm with Salvation Army, and we are part of the Victim Service Provision for JAD. Part of the reasons why it's really weird standing in front of this microphone. Part of the reasons why people struggle, there are all kinds of psychological reasons why we do what we do, why we are where we are in our lives. And just from trauma perspective, think if you watched any of documentaries, how these raids look. No offense to you guys, but my blood pressure would be probably this high if I was in situation. And then from the stressful lives and dangerous lives that they're living up to that point, when I show up and my colleagues show up, most of them are hungry, tired, withdrawn on drugs, and we have interrupted the only life they know. They have been already spitted on for many, many years or not too long, but they don't believe that they deserve anything better. So when I come to offer them something, they don't believe me that there is a better life out there. So until we solve that kind of interface of how to provide, we offer, we keep offering, but at the end of the day, they're their best experts. It might not be in their best interest to leave that time with us, but we keep offering services, and we do get sometimes calls later on because we give our contact information for them to reach us, and they do reach out. Not in large numbers yet, but we are getting there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Excellent point, and it absolutely illustrates the importance of our partnership, community and law enforcement. Law enforcement, we need to know what's out there in the community for our victims, who can step in and help them long term. This is why it's so important for all of you to get to know your law enforcement and for law enforcement to understand what you provide and how you can help victims, because we have to do it together. Okay, I'll move on. The next question. As a block club leader, so as a club leader, what should I tell my neighbors? What is it that they have to be aware? What is it that they have to look for as it relates to human trafficking? So basically, what are the indicators? What should we be looking for? What should we be alert to? And when do we make that call?
What a neighborhood block club or anybody on their block should look for is those houses on a block where there's a lot of young people frequenting, where there's a lot of male traffic coming and going all times of the day, all times of the night. If you see these young girls look like they need to be in school, but they're hanging out on the front porch in the backyard, and these adult males are visiting the house, those are the type of things that you need to pay attention to in your neighborhood, not just on your block. As soon as you see that, you can call 911, and they can dispatch someone out to see if those kids are actually squatting in a house, or is there someone allowing them to stay there so they can engage in illegal activities. But based on my experience, that's where it starts at those type of houses, and then it just gets bigger and bigger until the pimp hears about, hey, there's a bunch of girls over on that house on that block, and he works his way over there and figures out a way how to trap them.
Just to add to that, there's an old adage in law enforcement: the police are the public are the police, meaning that one can't operate without the other. I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, there was a new concept that came to law enforcement. Actually, it's an old concept that was kind of reinvented called community-oriented policing. Police departments realizing that they cannot solve the crime without the involvement from the public. The only encouragement that I would tell you when you go back to your neighborhood associations and your block groups is that you folks are the people that know what normal is in your neighborhood. You know what doesn't belong. You know what vehicles belong. You know the people that belong. And you guys are the best informants or the best knowledge of what is abnormal. And when you see that abnormal, report that to the police. And that's the best advice I can give you.
Yeah, I can provide just a little bit of further comment on that point as well. Have you ever just had a situation that you've seen and it's like the hairs on the back of your neck stand up a little bit? If that happens to you, you might just consider, am I witnessing a trafficking or a potential exploitation situation in front of me? There's a nice situation that we share when we go out to various training locations to offer training on this topic, and it's about a police officer who makes what amounts to a traffic stop on the side of I-75. And eventually he comes to arrest a human trafficker, but it's because he had his radar up, right, to see the red flags or the warning signs that were right in front of his face. But if he didn't have his radar up to them, he may have just as soon missed everything. But so, for example, what he saw were 3 females, one of them a minor, being transported by one adult male. They were on their way from Michigan to Kentucky. The male said for a party, and it was as if they had sort of a cover story that they had formulated, except the girls couldn't remember almost anything about it, right? So they couldn't spell their names. They didn't know their dates of birth. The driver had control of their identification. And so these were sort of the telltale signs for the officer to say to himself, something's not right here. There's just something wrong about this whole situation. The combination of people, the age of the one, their destination, and the fact that nobody can keep their story straight, all of that sort of added up in his mind to a scenario that didn't seem right. And upon further investigation, the driver ended up being arrested. So it's a matter of, I think, just paying attention and listening to that sixth sense, if you have, that if you see something and it just seems off or it seems amiss, just ask yourself the question based on what you're hearing here. Am I witnessing a trafficking or an exploitation situation? You could be. You could not be. But it's potentially worth reporting, so something to consider.
Thank you. If I could add just a little bit to that, part of that question was, when do I call? And this comes up quite a bit, and it's often like the notion or the conventional wisdom is that, well, I need to see A, B, and C, and then call. And if I only see A and B, then I'm not going to call. It's not like that. There's no harm in reporting something that you just don't think appears or feels right. I'm not saying that law enforcement is going to run right out and investigate it, but what I will say is we'll review the data that comes in, and if we can compare that to other data that we have previously and it matches up in some way, that that tells law enforcement when we should focus in a certain area. So there's really no harm as long as what you're calling in is what you truly feel. You're not making something up, or you're not trying to get a neighbor in trouble or something like that. But if you see something that doesn't seem right to you, there's no harm in calling. If you're wrong, there's no backlash to you. It's not like we come and hunt you down and you get in any kind of trouble. It's nothing like that. All the information that law enforcement can get, the more the better.
I can't stress that enough. I can't stress that enough. The reason why you're here is because you want to know. But even after this day, I don't know, how many of you heard of the Detroit Police Department Civilian Academy? Just raise your hand. The Civilian Academy. Now, how many of you been a part of that? Okay, so everyone who do not have their hand up, what's the best way to create your relationship or make it stronger with law enforcement is taking an opportunity such as this. I myself have gone through it, and it has helped me to understand how to see something and how to report it. And when you have a relationship with your neighborhood police officers, with your district manager, your elected officials in your neighborhood, these are the people who woke up and say, I'm taking leadership position to help my community. So you have to hold them accountable and continue to report it. Don't you, that little spidey system start going off, you need to take care of that right away, because you not acting, it could be your child. That's how urgent it is. This next question is for State Rep Santana. Since there are laws that prevent FBI or social services from placing children into protective environments, even for their own good, what is being done on a legislative level to pass new laws to help these agencies better serve victims?
Thank you for the question. There have been several laws that have been introduced in the state legislature for the specific issue around human trafficking. I know that we are passionate about making sure that all law enforcement work collectively, and so if there's ideas that come up that can help support that, we're open to hear.
The next question is, a lot of first of all, it is 7:36, and I know you are getting tired maybe a little bit, even though the information is interesting. Please know that a lot of all of us will still be here to answer any personal questions or how can I get more involved. All these information tables right here on the side, they're here for you to take advantage of. So it says, a lot of focus is being placed on young ladies, which gives a false image that male victims do not exist. Can you speak to male victimology? That's for anyone. Yes, sir, thank you. Ladies first, or
Ladies first.
DPD first?
Ladies
Okay.
first.
Okay. Now, I guess I want to make sure I understand the question. Male victimology in regards to the psychological aspects, or in regards to how many male victims we get, or why we don't get as many male victims? I guess because I guess that's several different issues. But a lot of times people will say, well, how come, I hear you talk a lot about young ladies, but how come you don't talk about young men? Unfortunately, a lot of times we don't get young men because a lot of young men who may be presenting as transgendered to get dates and that type of thing, even if something happens, they're not reporting that, or they're not putting themselves out there because they don't want to be injured or killed if somebody that's soliciting their services finds out that they're not a female. We have had, I've been doing this for a little over 12 years. I don't even need the fingers on one hand to count how many male victims I have come in contact with in regards to sex trafficking, juvenile sex trafficking. But that's not to say that they're not out there. We just don't run into them as often. And as far as the victimology that goes into that, I couldn't speak as much to that because I haven't seen it as often. But I would imagine that it would be some similar issues that young ladies face, just in regards to being scared, being told whatever by the trafficker, feeling that they're not worth anything. They listen to everything that the trafficker states, and if the person is stating, it's just like your typical DV situation. It's, nobody's gonna love you, where you think you're gonna go, nobody's gonna want you. Don't you know, even if you go somewhere, I could replace you by tonight. All types of things that go into that prevent them from speaking up or leaving the situation. So I can't speak specifically to a lot of things because, like I said, we haven't had a lot of male victims, but Detective Kane, maybe you can expound upon that.
We don't see too many victims of human trafficking that are male, but they are out there. If they choose to come forward, it's rare. We do see a lot of sexual assault victims that are males at sex crimes. A lot of times it's family members, a lot of times it's young boys, their cousins, their brothers. We do see occasional teen abducted off the street by an older male and sexually assaulted in a vehicle, in an alley, or in an abandoned house. So the male victim is out there as far as sexually assaulted, but we don't see it too much in human trafficking in the city.
Thank you. And this next question is, and I guess to expound on, explain continued presence. Someone mentioned it earlier.
I'll try and field this one. I'm quite new, so bear with me. Agent Riggs spoke about it a little bit earlier. Continued presence is something that we offer victims who are not in the country legally while the crime is being investigated, and they're working toward getting legal status to be able to stay and work if they would like to. And it's actually changed from 1 year to 2 years now. So we have legal partners. University of Michigan Legal Clinic does a lot of our work to get continued presence, and the T visas and the U visas. And yes, it's part of the requirement to get continued presence is cooperation with prosecuting the case.
Thank you. So it is 7:40, and I'm going to wrap it up, the last question, but please know we're not kicking you out, like exactly at 7:59, but we really want you to take advantage of all the information. I cannot stress enough at the people at the table here, there are resources as well, because one of the things I found is that we have the information with law enforcement, but what about resources for victims? Where do they go? Who can we send them to? And we do have that information here on the side. So this is for the Detroit Police Department, and this is from a personal experience. I had 3 young women who were, what do you call it, catfish? It's catfish? Oh, yeah, okay. Catfish on social media. And unfortunately, one of the young ladies, she did, after she was threatened, she told her mother, and they went to the law enforcement, right, to the police. Fortunately, it wasn't Detroit Police Department, but what I'm noticing is some similarities. How are our men and women on the front line, our police officers on the front line, how they're prepared to receive tips or questions from residents when they feel like their children have been threatened or they're caught up in a situation that can lead up, like that's sextortion, or that can lead up into human trafficking. How are our frontline officers trained to receive that information?
Let Sarge answer that. Okay, that goes back to what I initially said, that our initiative is to train our younger officers how to take this how to capture this type of data and information so they can get it to us. Our patrol officers are trained in like many aspects, but the best metaphor I can give you is the patrol officer is like a handyman. He's good at little things, he get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of the other thing. What we need them to do is get the information to us, because we're the plumbers, the electricians, we're the ones that's skill specific to take that information. Sometimes a patrol officer might not know the right questions. That's why we're going into a different direction where we start to educate them more or with specific questions to ask when it comes to victimization of younger children, the human trafficking nexus, and things of that nature. So my response to that would be, we have places like Crime Stoppers and other tip lines, and that information is not going to go to the precinct. That's going to come directly to us, and that's really the best avenue to travel. Is sometimes maybe you can't go to a patrol. I mean, you can give the information to them, and they're armed to the sense where they can refer you to us, and then my people are highly trained in that. That's all we do, 24/7, year-round. So when that's all you do, you sleep, eat, and sleep, and that's all you think about, yeah, we're well-versed. We know how to get that information from. We know what to ask you. We'll ask you stuff that you didn't even think to tell us. So basically, when you want expert service, you got to go to the experts. So that's my response to that. So you give it to the officers, they'll give it to us, or refer you to us, and we'll get the right information we need to get out from you.
Yes, sir. Come to the. It's being recorded, and we'd like to hear your voice.
Again, like what Sergeant mentioned, if you speak out and talk to your neighborhood police officer, then we can get a plug in and then have that tunnel straight to them, because we serve that community and we're around that community. The same as now we're getting our training, and then we'll probably be going to the social workers, the counselors in the schools, as well as coming out to you all to educate you all, as well as ourselves. So we will probably be that tunnel that Sarge is talking about within your community. So just reach out to your neighborhood police officer, and then we can close that tunnel and build that bridge. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd just like to say also that that question that said if you thought that it might lead to human trafficking or that it was close to that, there's tip lines out there. So you call the tip lines, even if you don't have all the information or you got partial information, because these perpetrators are kept in a database. So you might mention something that rings an alarm and brings this person back to the forefront. Because a lot of these offenders we are familiar with, or we hear the name over and over and over again. So therefore, if we finally figure out who they are, we can backtrack different crimes they have committed in the past that we just didn't know who they were at the time. So if you think it's leading toward human trafficking, make sure you still call the tip line. Okay?
I'm Officer Coleman from the 8th Precinct, neighborhood police officer as well. Speaking for the Detroit Police Department, we're very good with our training. So every officer in the police department, specifically our patrol officers, we get a 40-hour training per year, and this topic is also covered. So if you just happen to come across an officer and you see this issue going on any kind of way, if you think that's the issue, feel free to express it to any officer you meet. And like Sarge said, we're taught to make the proper notifications. If we think it or if we know it, we will make that notification. Share it with us, and let's help these people out. So we're all trained, we're abreast to it, whether it's the youngest officer or the oldest officer, we're all getting that same information to pass it on to the proper channels.
I got one more question. Okay, so it is now 7:46, and there's a lot of questions about how can you get more information, how can you get trained, and let me tell you, here at the FBI, you have Will and Busra. Please visit this table as well as Valentina, because if you're from a church, an organization, a grassroots group, a school, any entity where there's youth, young adults, please make available of these trainings. They are free. Free 99, well, no 99, okay? Sincerely, I have, and I'm surprised that FBI and DHS, HSI are still friends with me, because I have put them to work, and now I have you to also put them in additional work so they can work 72 out of 24-hour day, right? So please go visit your precinct meetings. Go to your talk to your neighborhood police officers. Talk to your district managers. Use the tip lines. Talk to your commanders and your captains in your precincts. And if you don't hear something, follow up. Why? Because only the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So with that, I'm going to have, like, where's Valentina?
Thank you. So real quick, before we wrap it up, we just want to let you know we received all your questions, and the staff for Councilwoman Brenda Jones wanted me to assure you that these questions will be answered. They will ask the questions, and if you provided your contact information when you first came in, they will answer those questions for you. They'll get back to you. Also, a huge thank you on behalf of the panel to Councilwoman Brenda Jones for caring, for putting this together, for calling for this. An incredible service to the community. In addition, as we close, we do have one person that wants to share her story with you, so we're going to give her a few minutes as she shares her powerful story with you. Ms. Harriet Kamak, please come up. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Hey. My name is Harriet Kamak. Thank you so much for your diligence, and to everybody, I see some faces I recognize. Hey, Nicole, how you doing? Hey, everybody. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story. I am an author, but first, I'm a mother. Secondly, I'm also a survivor. And in my story, I was an undocumented immigrant for 15 years living right here in Metro Detroit. And how did that happen? As you can tell, I wasn't born here, right? I'm from Montego Bay, Jamaica. And when I came here with my then husband. And through the process of immigration, that's a whole other story that we can talk about at another time. However, the point of my story that intersects with this is the fact that for 15 years I was undocumented, and here's why. I was a victim of domestic violence. My ex-husband beat me up. I'm not going to lie about it. It's something I talk about all the time. And in my story, he wrote a letter to immigration telling them that if I got a green card, then I would leave the country with my daughter. So they believed me. So in 2000, August of 2000, when the towers were still up in New York at One Federal Plaza, I think that's what it's called, right? On the 96th floor, I'll never forget, the immigration officer who sat with me told me that he believed my ex-husband and that he would not grant me residency status. So for 15 years after that, we literally, my daughter and I, stayed in the system unaware. Nothing happened. But here is the thing. When you hear stories like that, it makes us all realize that I'm just the face of this now, but there are many other faces around Metro Detroit of people who are just like that. I see my friend Alexandra from the Salvation Army in the audience. And what it tells us is that human trafficking is real. It is real because there are young girls just like me. I have a daughter. My daughter, who is now 25, she's now, I'm old enough, right? She is in law school. But when this became a problem, she said to me, Mom, this could have been my story. Had it not been for a family structure and a support system, she could have been trafficked. And this is why Nicole brought it out when she said that when you see girls and you see they're acting out, and you see people, it's time out for us to sit back and look at people and judge people without really knowing their story. For 15 years, I was just a face. If you saw me in Kroger or if you saw me in Meijer, you would have thought I was just another person. You would not have known that at the end of the day, when I go home, I'm beaten within an inch of my life. I'm threatened that if I go to immigration, I would lose custody of my child. That's the story of what it feels like. So I ask you today, when you leave here, don't just walk through these doors. Don't just ignore the next person. Get all the information from ICE, the FBI, everybody else who is here, and be a little bit more aware. If you see something, for God's sake, say something. When it was my turn, I wished someone had called the police. I can't tell you how many times we were driving down the freeway, And I would just pray that the person in the next lane would see the terror on my face and call for help. When you see something, say something. Even if you feel terrified yourself, call 911, tell them you wish to be anonymous, but report what you see and keep it moving. And pray for that person. If someone hadn't held my hand and prayed me through, do you know what it feels like to be undocumented for 15 years? I live in Detroit. I couldn't even go to Canada. And Canada was just right across the street, literally right across the river. This is what it feels like. So I ask you today, the Exodus Foundation is what I do. I provide transitional shelter for victims of human trafficking. Go to our website, theexodusfoundation.com. I'm sorry I'm a little out of breath. I was running today. And do me a favor. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I would like to recognize a few people, our everyday warriors. CEO Mick Robinson, who is targeting local motels that enable trafficking. Is he? Hi. Let's give him a hand. And also Jason Dixon, please stand up. Recognize another warrior here. Jason Dixon of the Avenue of Fashion Business Association, who works to raise awareness of businesses used by traffickers. We are everyday heroes. I might not have a badge. I mean, I have one, but it's not like I got trained in anything. But we have to protect ourselves. We have to hold each other accountable. We have to be the community and the change that we want to be. I know it sounds corny, but we are the answers that we have been looking for, okay? We are. If we want to save our city, our community, our children, we have to be brave enough and have the courage enough and use that emotional muscle, not be afraid to stand up and stand out, because law enforcement, they'll come and help once they're called, but before they get there, you are there and you are here. So with that note, I sincerely appreciate the partnership that I have with every single last person sitting at this table. Could we please give them, first of all, you guys stand up, I know you're tired. Let's give them a hand. Their tireless work every single day, the emotional fortitude it takes to continue doing your work and not giving up, we sincerely appreciate you. Thank you so much. And on this note, I sincerely want to give my gratitude to Council President Brenda Jones, because first of all, I was like a lone voice, and next thing you know, here we are, the second time around this year, and si se puede in Spanish, yes we can. So with that note, I would like to bring up Council President Brenda Jones, and you guys can stand sexy or you can sit right there.
I love you too. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for caring. And thank you for wanting to help and wanting to get more information. When I first found out and started getting the information about human trafficking, I knew I had to be one to step up and help and try to make a difference. My first town hall meeting that we hosted, and we had a panel, I literally was in the hospital and told the doctor, I gotta go. I got a town hall meeting I gotta go to, because it's so important that we deal with human trafficking. And by the grace of God, I got out of the hospital that day and came straight to the town hall meeting. God is so good. And so again, I want to thank the panel. I want to thank you all for the work that you do every day in helping combat. This young lady works tirelessly every day in the city of Detroit and in the metropolitan area. I want to thank my staff, the Church of God in Christ, and I'm going to ask if Evangelist Faith Brooks will come up and have a word or two or three or four or five, because we are gracing their home tonight on behalf of her great father, Bishop P.A. Brooks.
Thank you so much.
President Brenda Jones. Bishop Brooks is not able to be here tonight, and he wishes for me to share the following statement. We have a great city. All cities are subject to crime. This, of course, is the most heinous crime, human trafficking. It goes back in human history when human slavery was a major practice and is prevalent throughout the world today. But we're thankful for community, civic, law enforcement, local, state, and federal to attack this thing called human trafficking. Bishop Brooks wishes to thank Congressman John Conyers, who has always been a vanguard of protecting our people and our community. City Council President Brenda Jones. I see Fumi here from UNICEF. Sister Pam Parker, Sister Rogers, and the Church of God in Christ Social Services of Michigan for joining in this effort. And certainly we want to thank each of you for being here to raise awareness and to discuss further solutions to this problem. God bless you. Thank you again, President Brenda Jones, and we pray that the Lord will continue to bless us to alleviate human trafficking. Thank you. At our last meeting that we had, our last town hall meeting, we've had several things to happen since that last town hall meeting. And we're forming a commission, and we've talked about a commission. And talking about that commission, we've had 2 planning meetings to define the commission's goals. And we have started defining the goals, the objectives, the structure, and the legal implications. We have had initial contact made with law enforcement, made with our judicial systems, made with religious organizations, business organizations, and community stakeholders. I want to give a special thanks to Chief Craig, because when I had a conversation with Chief Craig, and he said, well, I knew it existed, but I did not know just how bad it was in Michigan and just how bad it was in the city of Detroit. And he said, I'm stepping up to the plate to do more, and that he did. And so I want to sincerely thank Chief Craig publicly for his assistance that he have given and for all that you all do as well. We also have participated in a briefing session and also a training session that was put on and sponsored by Strategic Staffing Solutions. They flew in a 501c3 organization, and I want to say they were from Tennessee or Texas, Tennessee. And they were so advanced in what they were doing, and they are willing to come back and work with us in what we are doing here. Our corporation counsel has assigned a deputy corporation counsel, Megan Malasmoni, to assist with the formation of the commission. We are identifying funding sources, because we know we're going to need funding sources in order to get all of the training and all of the people trained that need to be trained, because we have looked at different sources that we know are eyes and ears out there, such as DTE. They have people out on the streets every day. And so we just have to make sure everybody get trained. We have to take the training sessions into our school systems, make sure our children know what to look for and how to help combat what is going on. And we are planning on launching this commission. We know there are just so many different organizations working in every area fighting human trafficking, and we need to try to bring everybody together. Try to bring everybody together so we can fight real well. And not just here in Detroit and in Michigan. This is a national problem, because what happens is they take the babies from Michigan to another state. And so we have to look at how are we going to combat this throughout the United States. And so for that reason, I do thank Congressman John Conyers and all of his help, along with Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. I've talked to her. I've also talked to our senators as well to help assist in what we are doing. So we have on October the 14th, Saturday, October the 14th, a walk, and we are asking to join in on that walk for the 27 million people enslaved across the globe. Saturday, October the 14th, from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be meeting at Hartford Memorial Baptist Church on James Cousin. You can register online. There are some flyers over there at the table where you can get information. The table says Genesis Youth. Flyers are over there. Please get that information and come out and join us as we walk for the 27 million people that are enslaved across the globe. I want to thank everyone who have come out tonight. I want to thank you for joining us in this fight against human trafficking. It is a fight, and it's going to take all of us to help beat. And I know with God and with you all, we can overcome every barrier and every problem that we have. God bless you all. Again, thank you so much to everyone who has participated in the panel. Thanks for giving of yourself. Thanks for giving of your time. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Church of God in Christ, St. Paul. Thank you, the Social Services Organization. Thank you to my staff. And thank you to everybody again. God bless you. Good night and be safe.